5th January, 1884. There. The night has passed without event, and I have awoken whole and sane. Ms Maksymiuk and I breakfasted with Mr. Brewer this morning, and I have now retired to my room to continue my narrative of yesterday's events. We arrived at Mr. Brewer's around 3 o'clock. I paid the cabby and bid him not to speak of what he might have overheard. He seemed happy enough to do so for the extra pence I gave him, and drove away whistling. "Where we are?" Ms Maksymiuk inquired. "Regent's Park," I told her, taking her arm lightly and guiding her up the drive. I spoke quickly, for there was little enough time to talk. "Mr. Brewer, a friend of my father's, lives here. I have come to him for shelter from the Red Door before. He will certainly provide it to us now." "And how you will explain the presence of me, Mr. Fletcher?" I thought for a quick moment. "We shall say we met by coincidence. Tell him your shop is in Cadogan Square. I let slip mention of the door, and you, knowledgeable of antiquities, joined me in discovering its origin." "Don't," I insisted, "mention anything supernatural about it. He will only laugh. He believes my acquaintance with the Red Door stems from a severe lack of sleep." "He is a stupid Englishman, yes? Bumbling Constable Brewer, who sees footprints under window and does not find knife under floorboards." Despite myself, I laughed. "Yes, that's the idea." We had reached the front door, so I rang the bell. Simeon, Mr. Brewer's butler, answered the door promptly. "Ah, Mr. Fletcher," he said. "Mr. Brewer is in the middle of his luncheon, I'm afraid. Shall I tell him you called?" Simeon could be at times infuriating. "I would prefer to wait inside for him, if I might." "He may be some time in returning," Simeon drawled. "But if you insist, the drawing room is free at the moment." "I do insist," I said. Simeon rolled his eyes and presented the door with an impeccable white-gloved hand, standing aside so that Ms Maksymiuk and I might enter. "May I take your coat, sir?" he inquired dryly. Gratefully, I removed my coat and handed it over. "Madame?" "I shall keep my coat, thank you," Ms Maksymiuk said brusquely. "I do not want your sweaty English hands all over it." I looked a little more closely at Ms Maksymiuk's coat. It seemed to be made of fox fur. Simeon took his leave, and I guided Ms Maksymiuk to the drawing room, and we sat before the fire, she with her coat curled up in her lap. "Would you care for a drink?" I asked tentatively. She snorted. "You English. Always you try to play host in places you do not own. See if he has vodka. I will have none of your wood-soaked English spirits." I hid a smile behind my hand, rising and crossing to the drinks cabinet. Despite myself, Ms Maksymiuk was beginning to grow on me. "No vodka, I'm afraid," I told her after a cursory search. "But there's gin and tonic." "It will do," Ms Maksymiuk conceded. "Do not put so much of the fizz water. You will put gin so." She held up her thumb and forefinger about 2 inches apart. "And the water so." The space between the fingers shrank to only an inch. "You will think already that I cannot drink because I am woman. I will tell you that I drink better than any Englishman because I am a Russian." "Yes, Ms Maksymiuk," I said obediently, but with a touch of humor. "And also enough with the Ms and Mister. You will call me Anna, and I will call you Leslie, and then I will not have to hear you massacre my name every time we meet. Our mothers give us names to call ourselves, why we do not use them." I was, to say the least, rather taken aback. Perhaps it is customary in Russia to call perfect strangers by their Christian names. I do not know. Nonetheless, I was not hesitant in voicing my objection. Now, I feel that's rather a step too far, I said. I poured her a gin and tonic, half of one and half of the other. I can't say I feel I know you well enough to be on a first-name basis with you. Oh, you English. Very well. I am Anna Ivanovna Maksymiuk. I was born in St. Petersburg in 1852, April, if you care. I come to England after my parents die and I start up shop. I live well, I eat well, I meet interesting and stupid Englishmen, boring and stupid English women. I sell to them junk and they give me hundreds of pounds. I do not have husband, I do not have suitors. Can't imagine why, I said faintly, handing her drink to her. She sipped it and winced, then handed it back. Not enough of the gin, she told me. You will fix. So I live alone in my flat with my little cat and slowly I become boring like all English women. But never do I become stupid. Now, Mr. Fletcher, you will call me Anna. I hope you don't expect a life story like that out of me, I commented, adding more gin to her drink. I brought it back, along with a gin and tonic of my own, and sat in the chair next to hers. She shrugged. I do not care for story of your life. I will call you Leslie, and you will call me Anna. So. She sipped her drink again. Better, but still only acceptable. Next time I will make drinks. I couldn't think of what to say, so I simply nursed my gin and tonic and stared into the fire. The red door. He has made a quiet man of you, Ms Maksymiuk said at last. I never was much one for idle chit-chat. Then perhaps his intervention will be good in the end for you. I have never seen an Englishman so excited as when you come into my shop, and here I have also seen Red Door. It makes me wonder if all Englishmen have so warm blood, and it is only crazy English custom and not English weather that makes them so cold. Is it not so in Russia? I inquired. Ms Maksymiuk threw her head back and laughed. Niet! Oh, it is never so. Russia, it is cold country. Sometimes in winter we go outside and the vodka, she freezes in our cups. So we stay warm by our hot blood, and by our drink. The vodka, she is very good for keeping warm on very cold winter days. How you English stay warm when winter comes? Well, I suppose we just huddle by the fire. Drink hot cocoa, eat hot soup. You know, that sort of thing. So, but in this country you do not have winter. You have here 9 months of rain and 3 of snow. But there is no winter here. I know because I have lived here for many years. What you call winter? Ha! It is not winter. I was saved from further derision by the return of Mr. Brewer. I rose immediately, abandoning my drink on the side table. Ms Maksymiuk, I was distressed to see, did not rise, but merely regarded Mr. Brewer with grave suspicion. Leslie! Mr. Brewer cried, clasping my shoulder. Well, well, my boy, what brings you here? Good afternoon, Mr. Brewer, I replied. Unfortunately, I've run out of the medicine Dr. Gent supplied me with, and I'm afraid the house has, again, begun to grate on my nerves. I hope you don't mind my intrusion. Oh, not at all, not at all! Didn't I say you were always welcome? Help yourself to a drink. Thank you, I already have, I'm afraid, I admitted. At this point, Ms Maksymiuk finally stood up, like a queen about to address her people. So, she said imperiously, you are the Mr. Brewer about which my Leslie has so often spoken. She presented her hand and, to my surprise, allowed Mr. Brewer to kiss her knuckles. My, Leslie! Who is this vision in white, Mr. Brewer, may I introduce Anna Ivanovna Maksymiuk? Ms Maksymiuk interrupted. I am afraid that Leslie still has not mastered the name of me. Still? Mr. Brewer said, fixing me with a penetrating gaze. Well, Leslie, it seems as though you have some explaining to do. Have a seat, finish your drink. He placed himself in the chair nearest the fire. Ms Maksymiuk settled back into her chair like a butterfly, and I sank into my own, reeling, wonder what I could possibly say to Mr. Brewer. Fortunately, I did not have to worry for long. "Has he then not told you?" Ms Maksymiuk inquired demurely. "And here I thought you were his closest of friends. He spoke of you as such. Perhaps my idea was incorrect." "Oh, well, did he?" Mr. Brewer scrambled, flushing. I was beginning to suspect that this was a particular talent of Miss Maksymiuk's, to make Englishmen blush. She nodded. "Oh, da! Mr. Brewer, he says, you will love. He is shining example of best sort of Englishman. He accepts none of the nonsense. He is most hospitable. He will certainly help us in time of need." "Time of need?" Mr. Brewer bumbled, his face drawn with confusion. "Oh, yes, for this time is indeed needy for us. The Red Door, he haunts me day and night. I can get no sleep, and so poor Leslie, he does not sleep too. I beg him to take me away from horrible old house, and he tells me we shall stay with Mr. Brewer until Red Door can be, how it is said, killed?" "I think destroyed, perhaps," Mr. Brewer offered. "Yes, destroyed. So we come here, and poor lovely Leslie, he says it is his trouble all. He does not want to embarrass me in front of no-nonsense Mr. Brewer." "Miss Maksymiuk, really," I managed at last. She turned to me, her eyes imploring. "Oh, Leslie, darling, why you are so shy? It is proper, is it not, to call one's fiancée by her own name?" Mr. Brewer spat his drink across the room. I almost did the same. "Fiancée?" Mr. Brewer stammered. Leslie! Why haven't I heard about this?" I don't..." Miss Maksymiuk put a hand on my knee. "Oh, my poor shy Leslie! You did not tell him?" She turned again to Mr. Brewer, but kept her hand on my leg. "We are to be married, Leslie and I, come spring." Again the gaze came back to me. "You did not tell him?" "No," I said, finally beginning to catch on to a game. "I'm afraid I didn't." I looked to Mr. Brewer, somewhat imploring. "I wasn't sure if you would approve, and, well, until the date was certain, and all the kinks were worked out, well, I must say I didn't want to risk your disapproval." I took Miss Maksymiuk's hand in my own, mostly out of a desire to remove it from my leg. "You see, Anna and I are, well, smitten with one another. We met a few months ago, and it's all been very swift. But the heart, sometimes it is both swift and sure," Miss Maksymiuk added. "And so it is with Leslie and me. So when the Red Door, he becomes unbearable, I beg Leslie to let me stay here with Mr. Brewer. And finally he gives in. He says, 'Very well, Anna, we shall both go this time. It is tall time you met him anyways.'" "High time," I corrected gently. Miss Maksymiuk smiled at me. "Oh, you're so silly English language," she said affectionately. Well, I must say this is quite irregular. Quite irregular," Mr. Brewer blustered. "Leslie, why didn't you tell me sooner? Good God, boy, did you think I would forbid true love?" He laughed. Come, you can stay as long as you like, you and your lovely Ms Maksymiuk, and we shall talk all about it." "Thank you, Mr. Brewer, most sincerely," Miss Maksymiuk demurred. It was some time later when Mr. Brewer finally let Miss Maksymiuk and me be alone together. It was, in fact, after dinner when Simeon summoned Mr. Brewer away, reminding him that it was time for his evening constitutional. Well, I suppose I should leave the two of you alone, eh? Unless you'd like to join me?" "No, but thank you," I said. "I'm afraid the weather is a bit too chilly for me at the moment." "Well, suit yourself," he said. and exited, Simeon trailing dutifully along behind. "What the bloody hell do you think you're playing at?" I demanded, rounding on Ms Maksymiuk the moment I was certain our hosts were out of earshot. "What, is the so-called Englishman getting his blood hot again?" she asked, smiling. "What could have possibly possessed you to think that was a good idea?" "Oh, so now you think I am stupid. Tell me, Leslie, what bumbling Mr. Brewer would think of you if you come in here with total stranger woman with crazy tales of sinister red door. Does he welcome you and stranger woman in? No! He throws you out into street, maybe calls madhouse and has them drag you and stranger woman away. I know this after 2 seconds in presence of Mr. Brewer. How long you have known him and do not know these things?" I was on the verge of objecting when I thought, truly, about what Mr. Brewer would have done had I continued with my original plan of telling him the truth. In all honesty, Ms Maksymiuk's projection was not far from the truth, or at least as close as I calculated. Still, I was not willing to let the point go easily. "Still, you could have warned me of something." "How? I do not know what part I will play until I have seen Mr. Brewer. You play your part well enough, Leslie. Do not fret." "Yes, but how am I to keep up the act? Mr. Brewer is bound to ask questions like when, where, and God, worst of all, am I invited? To which, of course, I can't say no." To my surprise, Ms Maksymiuk took my hands in her own. "Do not fear, Leslie. I am not stupid woman. I bring you into this. I also will bring you out in the end." What else could I do but trust her? Had I attempted any action of my own, it would certainly alert Mr. Brewer to our ruse, at which point I was certain I would no longer be welcome in his home. Therefore, I resolved to play my part as well as I was able, until, at least, the crisis was over. The rest of the night passed without event. Mr. Brewer returned from his constitutional and went to bed, after showing Ms Maksymiuk and me to our room. We had a bit of a disagreement about who would sleep where, but in the end I gave her the bed and opted to sleep on the room's sofa. Once I was reasonably certain she had fallen asleep, I began writing last night's account, in the midst of which I was interrupted by a most disturbing phenomenon. Glancing up from my work, across Ms Maksymiuk's sleeping form, in the light of the dying coals of the fire, I thought I saw, for a brief moment, the red door standing in the doorframe. Startled, I blinked and sat up quickly, but the illusion was gone, and the door in its normal state. Panicked, gravely concerned, I scarcely slept. Nevertheless, I woke in the morning, whole, sane, and unharmed, as did Ms Maksymiuk. Since breakfasting with Mr. Brewer, I have been in our assigned room, taking down this account. I have been here some hours, and I assume, from the frequency and volume of knocking upon the door, that I am needed elsewhere.